And welcome back to World Sports Show. Charlie Flo here on the line. We have Coach Tom Sermanni, the Orlando Pride. How are you doing tonight, Coach?
Very well. Good evening, gents. How are you?
Really, really good. Sun actually starting to show up. I'm sure you don't have that problem down in Orlando as much as us here in Philadelphia.
You getting what down up there?
We're finally getting some sunlight up here. Finally get some sunshine. We've been talking about it's been a brutal winter.
The snow's melting away, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's been a relatively mild average 75 a day up here, down here. So it's not all great.
I mean, it's crazy to think that actually is a kind of a factor in your league. You guys are such a spread out league with you have almost all four corners of the U.S. continent covered, and you guys, I think the biggest thing for you is maybe having wet fields is your biggest problems.
It is. It gets a wee bit wet here in the summer, but it gets a wee bit hot as well. So, but I'll take the hot before the cold. That's for sure.
Yeah, you guys had an interesting game this weekend. You tied Seattle. You're right there in the thick of it, trying to battle for a playoff spot. I mean, Marta's goal has got to be up there, one of the better goals we've seen all season.
It was a terrific goal. I thought, it's not untypical of Marta. It's if you've got this ability to pull stuff out, and she did that for us in the game. And it's great to have her back. She literally, the Brazilians had probably about 1.5 training sessions and back into the game. So, yeah, certainly good to have her on the field in our coloured shirt.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue going into the season, with all the international call-ups is having to battle through that. Was there anywhere in your mind, hey, we just get enough points and just kind of stay in the thick of it, that you don't want to put yourself in a chasing mode, but you're missing some of your key players. How did you approach that and your staff approach that this season?
No, we talked about that. We talked about the importance of, we knew the season was going to be rocky, and still is. We reckon till probably the middle of May before we feel that our squad will be settled and have been together for, a relatively decent amount of time. So we still got a few weeks to go in relation to that. But at the same time, as you say, you've got to keep in the mix and you've got to keep picking up points. And we've done it, but we could be, I'd have been happier if we were probably 2 points more better off.
Any goals on the overall season? You guys making the playoffs last year is probably a step in the right direction. What is some of your targets this season?
Again, making the playoffs. I mean, that's the key, is that we want to be in the top four. Obviously, it would be nice to be at the top of the top four, but the main aim is to get in the top four, and this is a very competitive league. And, as you say, it's going to be pretty disrupted this year with internationals again, and that hits us particularly hard because we've, to get a squad of the quality that we've got in a shorter period of time that we have, we've had to go down that international route. So, when those international fixtures and FIFA dates come up, but it hits us particularly hard. But again, our aim is to be in the top four. But there are 9 competitive teams in this league who all have the same aim.
Yeah, you talk about with the internationals. I mean, the upside is, you can play some good ball, get some points, and then some of your players that don't normally see play time, it's kind of a preview of what, they can do come later down the season if they're ever called upon again.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the season, we've been missing at least 5 players for 3 of our games, and more than 3 games, and that's been up to other players to come in and step up, which they've done. So what we feel we've got is that we've got good depth in our squad this year. So the players that are maybe not starting when the internationals are here are more than capable of holding their own in the competition.
Now, looking at the season as it's going along, that we talk about this a lot with all the coaches in this league. You guys know each other very well. That you look at a lot of other leagues outside the world, that there's almost a game where you say, all right, this is going to be a 4-0 win. I mean, not that you don't take it serious, but it's probably got the most parity where there's no such thing as a team that's a favorite every game, where it feels like it's almost a flip of a coin where you have to be on your A game every single week.
Without doubt. There is absolutely no game that you can walk into in this competition and say, well, this is 3 points. Whereas as in every other women's competition in the world, that's a given. And there's probably the disparity between the top and the bottom in all other women's competitions in the world is significant. The parity here between the top and the bottom is minimum, absolutely minimum. And I think you saw that this weekend. I mean, 3 of the 4 results were 1-1 draws, and the other result was a 2-0 win. So you don't get much tighter than that.
No, that's the thing is it every week, and you have every team that's loaded with stars where, like you talk about other leagues where, you have every single roster in this NWSL has players that for multiple countries that are starting for their country. And that's the thing is there's never a week where you have a roster of 11 players that are just kind of key average players, just professionals. But almost every one of these young ladies on every team, you're talking 4 or 5 players play for their country.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge international contingent here and high-quality international players as well. So you have that, and then you have the base of literally the whole US women's national team squad, and players who are on the fringes of that squad, or players who have just dropped out of that squad, and then you also have the Canadian national team players here. So, that you've got a great deal of strength, whereas if you look at Europe, the big clubs in Europe tend to attract all the best players. And when you filter down those leagues, you really get that parity across the competition.
So this week coming up, you're going to be facing Chicago. You get to go up against Sam Curry, and she's coming right back in time for you to face her, And what has it been like seeing her just emerge as just a machine this past year?
Unbelievable. I mean, we always knew she had potential. We brought her into the Australian national team as a 15-year-old in 2009. And, she unfortunately tore her ACL the following year, but then came back and played in the World Cup in 2011 as a 17-year-old. And so she's always had that unbelievable potential and unbelievable energy. And what you've seen now is that now mature into a really professional player who still has all those attributes, the skill, the physical qualities, the energy, and she just, she's got a unique ability to play the game with a smile on her face. I was talking to her after we beat Sky Blue 5-0 down in Orlando near the end of last season, and we were going off the field chatting, and she, within 5 minutes of the game finishing, she was smiling and laughing and said, "Oh, you smashed us there, didn't you?" And she's just, whereas most players would have just been, their chin would have been hitting the ground and she'd be walking off and not talking to anybody. But she's just got an unbelievable personality. And I remember when we used to play, particularly in Asia, with our under-17 and under-20 team. So Sam was a member of the 17s, the 20s, and the national team. So when we played tournaments with the younger age groups, all the teams stayed in the same hotel. And Sam would know people, couldn't speak the language, couldn't communicate verbally, but she'd know people in every other team, the Vietnamese girls, the Thailand girls, the Japanese girls. She's just got an amazingly infectious personality, and just a great girl.
I mean, the Australian team have had a great showing into some of the international tournaments. I mean, last year they came and won the tournament they played on the West Coast. And, just from coaching the women's national team here in the U.S. and the Australian, what are some of the differences you've noticed between the U.S. players and the Australian players?
Well, I think that the difference was in the teams were at different stages when I had them. The Australian team was very much a team that they built up and then rebuilt again. So we had when I left the job, the players who are now sort of coming into that mature age were very, very young at the time. So there was a very youthfulness about the Australian team, whereas the US team was very much an established group of senior professional players. So the dynamic within the groups were very different.
Now, what were the facilities like in Australia? Because, I mean, you've got good facilities with Orlando playing, and then with the U.S. you have top-notch facilities because they're starting to be a world-class power team. But what is the facilities and day-to-day like in Australia for those teams?
Well, the facility, I mean, the facilities or the setup for the national team is very good.
Yeah.
The W League is as good as we could get it when we started it, in the sense that, they're only playing 12, 14 games You don't have quite the same resources as you have here. I mean, what you've got to remember, Australia is a country that's the same size as the US, but only has a population of 25 million people. So there are significant challenges to, and it's a multi-sport country like the US where, athletes play a whole variety of sports. So it's not just, a very soccer-specific nation. So those are more of the challenges. It's just that, the resources are limited due to the size of the country and the limited population and the competition amongst other sports. But I think what you tend to do then is that it's a bit easier to spot the good talent. One of the issues I've always said in America is that it's too big and you've got too many players. So in some ways that becomes a hindrance to be able to spot, identify, and then bring players into the system. So the big advantage we had in Australia was that, we saw a 16-year-old that had a bit of potential. We could immediately bring them in to our national team or our underage national teams or to camps and embrace them in the system. That's far more difficult to do here in the US.
Yeah, definitely, because there's so many other players. And what I really like about the W League in Australia and the NWSL is they don't step on each other's toes, that they sync really well. And a lot of these players do that, play in the U.S. and then go play in Australia. And I'm sure that you probably, you like that, seeing some of your players that are younger in the early 20s that need that development. I mean, the Australian League is a great league for them to help develop their NWSL game.
Very much so. I mean, it's a great fit. It's a great fit soccer-wise. It's a great fit culturally. It's a great fit in the football calendar. So in many ways, it's fantastic. And for the players here, the players here that are perhaps not going to be with national teams, etc., but are good professional players, it's great to be able to extend their season. Instead of a 7-8 month season, they now have a 10-11 month season playing all the time. That also gives them the experience of living away from home, because particularly US players, they don't tend to want to travel too much. So they much prefer staying at home. So that experience of going away from home, a similar environment but different nevertheless, different kind of clubs, slightly different style of soccer, and getting that experience is invaluable for some players. We had Rachel Hill go down there this year to play for Perth, and she had a fantastic time, and it's been really helpful for her career.
So you've done a lot of journeying. You're from Scotland. You've coached in Australia. Now you coach in Orlando. I'm sure you've tasted a lot of different foods. We love talking about food on the show. I got to ask, where are some of the best places to eat, like in Australia? What are they known for food-wise?
Well, it's interesting. It's a very, very cosmopolitan place, Australia, because you've got to remember that the population growth in Australia really only happened in the 60s, and that was the Europeans came in. And then in the 80s, a huge influx of Vietnamese have come in, and then Southeast Asians have come in over the past 25, 30 years. So there's a great mix, and some of the Asian food down there is phenomenal. It's really, really good. So although the actual traditional Australian food is kind of, if you like, British, like steaks on the barbecue, and things like that, and prawns and all that kind of thing. That's your traditional, bit of crocodile meat here and there, and that kind of thing. But it's a really, really cosmopolitan place, simply because the ethnicity of the population is still quite current. So you have that influence in the food, the Greek influence, the Italian influence, the Asian influence. So it's a really, really cool place for food.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you for calling the show and appreciate your time, and wish you great success this season. Hope to see you guys back in the playoffs again.
Fantastic. I hope we get there as well, and I really appreciate the call.
All right, no problem. Talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
That was Coach Tom Sermanni, head coach at Orlando Pride. NWSL, has great ties. He is Scott.
Thank you for watching a World Sports Show production. For more info, go to worldsportsshow.com.